In this video, we're going to be practicing our rounding. And this is going to be page 10 of the textbook. And because this is such an important skill, I'm going to go back to my notes. This is the page of notes that we made. And I'm going to turn the page. And we're going to use this as a sheet to practice some rounding. So I'm going to call this page Rounding Practice. We don't need to section it off because it's not notes. It's actually a practice page. So on this page, we're going to do lots and lots of examples of rounding. And just so I have it handy, I'm going to paste my rounding rule up here in the corner. You can draw yourself one of those so it's there for you to look at when you need it. Okay, on page 10 of the textbook, we are going to look at some examples. This says, Lesson 5, round to the nearest 10 or 100. Use your knowledge of place value and number sense to round 2 and 3-digit numbers to the nearest 10 or 100. Rounding numbers can be used to make estimates. Rounding can help you determine about how many or about how much. And remember, I told you about a symbol that means about. That's that squiggly equal sign. So if you see that, it tells us that a number has been rounded. To round a number to a particular place, look at the digit to the right of that place. Now, you and I have talked about this. The digit to the right of that place is called the neighbor in our diagram. And I'll bring our diagram in here for you to look at. Whoa, that's big. So here's our diagram that we did. If the neighbor is 5 or more, round up. That's what we've done here in the green section. This is our roundup section, 5 or more. We round up. If the neighbor is 4 or less, they call it rounding down. I prefer to call it staying the same because you're never going to subtract. And the rounding down makes some folks think of subtraction. So they're saying the same thing in their rule that we're saying in our rule. And if this is helpful to you, you can absolutely go back to your notes page and copy that in there. You can pause this video and copy that into your notes. Okay, the first example, round 454 to the nearest 10. Now I'm going to go to that page we set up and I'm going to put that example in here. Round 454 to the nearest 10. And then we're going to apply our rounding rule. So I will write my number and I'm going to underline the tens place because that's what it's telling me to round to. So that's the 5. Just draw a line under the tens place. And then immediately draw the neighbor arrow. So we look back at our neighbor. And I'm going to highlight the neighbor so we can see him very clearly because he's the one that tells us everything. This is your neighbor in yellow. So I come over to my diagram here, and the neighbor is a 4, so there he is, and he's in the stay the same range. Let me highlight stay the same. And then the roundup range is green. So the neighbor is telling me to do what? To stay the same. And for this first few, I'm going to write that. Neighbor says stay. So the 5 that I underlined will stay a 5. The neighbor gets rounded off, and then the 4 in the front doesn't change. So to the nearest 10, the answer is 450. And what this is saying on a number line is this. For those who like the straight number line, let's put it down here. We can have 440, 450, 460, 470, and 454 is nearest to 450. So it rounds to 450. So let's check ourselves and see what this says. Here's your answer. 454 rounded to the nearest 10 is 450. Now we want to round 454 to the nearest 100. So let's add that one right in here. Round 454 to the nearest 100. Okay, and let me paste in my rounding rule, because that's the one that helps me. You can also use a number line. And here we go. Let's write our number down. 4, 5, 4. And the place we want to underline is the hundreds place. And that's this first place we see. As soon as you underline, draw your arrow to remind you to go to the neighbors. And then look at your neighbor. Ask the neighbor, what should I do? Well, in this case, the neighbor is a 5, and the 5 is in the roundup range. So the neighbor says, I'm really having trouble with that word tonight. Neighbor says round up. So the underlined 4 becomes a 5, and these places get rounded off. So 454 is closer to 500 than to 400. Let's check ourselves. 454 rounded to the nearest 100 is 500. So we are correct. Here's a test example. Round 6 to 8 to the nearest 10. So let's put in that question. Round 6 to 8 to the nearest 10. So immediately my brain sketches this in my mind, and I write my number down. 6 to 8, and the place I want to underline is the tens place. As soon as I underline it, I look back to the neighbor and I ask the neighbor, what should I do? And the neighbor's an 8, so that's definitely in the round up range. So the 2 becomes rounded up to a 3. The neighbor gets rounded off, and the leader doesn't change. 628 to the nearest 10 is 630. Because the neighbor said, round up. The neighbor is calling the shots. Whatever the neighbor says to do, you do to the underlined number. Okay, let's check ourselves. It is option D, and that is correct. It's rounded to 630. Strategy. You can think of rounding as finding which number a certain number is nearest to. To round 348 to the nearest 10, ask yourself, is 348 closer to 340 or 350? It is closer to 350, so 348 rounds up to 350. Now I'm going to show you how to round 348 using our rule. So let's go here and say round 348 to the nearest 10. That's the place. Here's the number. Underline the tens place and look at the neighbor. And then apply your rounding rule. The neighbor is an 8. So that's over here in this range. So the neighbor is telling us to do what? Round up. And so the underlined number is the one that actually changes. It rounds up, neighbor rounds off, and the leader doesn't change. So 348 to the nearest 10 is 350. Okay, let's practice some more on page 11. And I'm going to put my, let me paste this and shrink it so I don't have to keep doing this. Get it right where it will fit in here, maybe. And see if I can copy that one. Yes. Let me just add these in because I know I'm going to need them. And then we can just roll with it. You do not have to do this if you don't want to. I'll get the bottom ones here in a minute. But since I'm using this as my anchor piece, this will help us. All right, number 1, let's take them one at a time. Round 67 to the nearest 10. So I will make the 67. I will underline the tens place and look to the neighbor to tell me what to do. And the neighbor is a 7, so it is in the round up section. So the 6 becomes a 7 and the neighbor rounds off. So I like answer D for this one, 70. Number 2, round 882 to the nearest 100. Look to the neighbor, and the neighbor will always tell you what you need to do. You look at the chart, the neighbor's in the roundup area, so you round up this number and round off the neighbors. answer here is 900. This is saying that the number is closer to 900 than it is to 800. Round 73 to the nearest 10. So 10 is the place that we are looking at. That makes 3 the neighbor. And 3 is not in the roundup section this time. It's in the stay the same section. So the 7 stays the same, and the neighbor rounds off. So the answer here is C, 70. Whoa. Sorry. Let's try that again. Let me take a snapshot of this one. Copy. There we go. And I was really zoomed in on that one. Round 396 to the nearest 100. So 396. The place is 100. Look to the neighbor and ask the neighbor, what should I do? The neighbor's a 9. That's in the roundup section. So the 3 bumps up to a 4. And the neighbors round off. And that would be 400. 396 is very close to 400. Much closer than it would be to 300. And I already see that I have a problem here because that 3 is colored and so is that 9. Bear with me just a minute. Let me fix this so that I have a good one to work with. Actually, that's still not what I want. Let me try, right here's one. Sorry about that. I didn't realize I had highlighted when I copied before. So let's try this one. All right, number 5. Which number could round to 930? Well, this is rounded to the tens place because the ones place is the neighbor. The neighbor got rounded off. So we're looking for tens here. So let's look at these. We have 905. Okay, that would round to 910. We have 921, and that would round to 920. We have 927, and that would round to 930. Check that out. This one is 936, and it would round to 940. So the one we want is C. It would round to 930 because its neighbor says to round up there. Which number could round to 20? So again, we're rounding to the tens because the neighbor is the ones place and it's rounded. So we want to go to our tens place for all of these. So 14 would round to a 10. Neighbor doesn't change. 17, neighbor says round up. 25, neighbor says round up. Neighbor said 2, but I'm not doing it. 30, And then 28, the neighbor says to round up, so that would be a 30. We want the one that would round to 20. So that's going to be B as in boy. Okay. Which number could round to 160? And again, this one has been rounded to the tens place. So let's do 151 to the tens place. The neighbor says don't change. You stay the same here. Then 153. The neighbor says don't change. You stay the same. 158. The neighbor says round up this time. And then 166. The neighbor says round up this time. So that one would go to 170. The one we're looking for is 160. So I like C on this one. Which number could round to 10? So we have this one that's rounded off, so this one is to the tens place. So looking at 3, let's look at our graph over here. Here's 3. Is it closer to the 10 side or the 0 side? It's closer to the 0 side. So 3 is nearer to 0. The 7, though, is closer to the 10 side. So 7 would be rounded to 10. Now 15 has a neighbor, so we have to look over at the neighbor. And the neighbor says round up. So that would be to 20. 17, we do have a neighbor involved, and the neighbor says round up. So also to 20. We are looking for the one that goes to 10. So that is B as in boy. Okay. I'm going to take this out because I need some room, I think. This is a word problem, so I'm going to follow that procedure that I showed you in earlier lessons. Maria bought a comforter for $92, a set of sheets for $68, a pillow for $34, and a blanket for $39. Which item would round to $30? So our question is, which item, we're looking for one item that would round to this number. So the comforter is $92. The sheets were $68. The pillow was $34. And the blanket was $39. Now I'm going to eliminate 2 of these answers right off the bat because they're more than $30. The comforter is way more than $30, so that's not our answer. The sheets are way more than $30, so that's not our answer. The question is it the pillow or the blanket? So the pillow, the neighbor says stay, so the pillow rounds to 30. On the blanket, the neighbor says what? Round up. So the blanket would be 40. and we want the one that rounds to 30. So a test strategy is to eliminate what you can. You know that A and B cannot possibly be the answers, so don't waste time on those. Just look at the answers that could be what you're looking for. At the local hardware store, Zach bought a hose for $15, a lawn sprinkler for $12, a pair of garden gloves for $9, and a watering can for $11. And here comes the question. Which item does not cost approximately $10? So we are looking for an item that does not cost, and here's our number, $10. So let's look at them one at a time. The hose was $15. The sprinkler was $12. The gloves were $9, and the watering can was $11. So let's round all of these to the nearest 10. This one is closer to 20 than to 10. This one is closer to 10 than to 20. This one is almost 10. And this one is just barely more than 10. So it would round to 10. The one that is not going to round to 10 is A. It's closer to $20 than to $10.